Scott Morrison wants 70 to 80% of Australia jabbed. Who here saw this? Who here saw what Scott Morrison has to say? That's right. Scott Morrison is painting a picture of some type of utopian paradise should 70 to 80% of Australia receive, I believe, at least 2 doses of one of the COVID-19 vaccinations. But my question for you at home is, what reason do we truly have to trust this man? Has Scott Morrison always been honest, open and transparent with the people of Australia? Or has he been deceptive and manipulative with the people of Australia? Did he lull us into a false sense of confidence last year when he said the vaccine wouldn't be compulsory? Or was he being quite descriptive in his terminology? I'll leave that for you to speculate at home. So I've got a short little clip here. It goes for about a minute of some remarks that Scomo made, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Well, the National Cabinet agreed the plan, and it's not a deal with me. It's a deal with the Australian people, and it's based on the best medical science and economic research in the world. And it says that you can safely open at 70 and 80% when the population is vaccinated to that level. The idea of COVID zero, that's not the issue once you get to 70 and 80%. Any state and territory that thinks that somehow they can protect themselves from COVID with the Delta strain forever, that's just absurd. I mean, New Zealand can't do that. They were following an elimination strategy. They're in lockdown. The way through is to get to those 70 and 80% marks, open safely. Of course, there are baseline things you still have to do. And when you hit 70 and 80%, you'll have an even higher rate of first dose vaccinations and an even higher rate of double dose vaccinations for the most elderly in our community.
All right, so what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think he's being honest? Well, let's have a look at Israel, because Israel is a country that has received just below 70% vaccination of their citizens. The majority of that figure being dosed, having 2 doses, but many people have actually received already a 3rd dose in Israel, yet they have a situation over there which is turning into a complete and utter nightmare. So let's take a look. Let's see what the heck is going on in Israel, because Israel has achieved the objectives of Scott Morrison. All right, so where are we? What are we looking at? We're looking at a website called Our World in Data, the vaccination rate for Israel. So we have 68% vaccinated, and that includes 63% with 2 doses or more, and just a small 5.28% of people who have received 1 dose. All right, so they've hit ScoMo's target. So let's have a bit of a look here. What the heck is going on in Israel? All right, Israel struggles with COVID surge despite mass vaccinations. All right, so how has this been determined? Are Israel using the classic RT-PCR test that's being used in Australia, or are they using some other type of testing method? Okay, that's a question for you at home. Okay, I know the answer, but I'm counting on you knowing the answer as well. All right, so look at this. Israelis flouting mask requirements may have been a main contributor to the rapid spread of the Delta variant in Israel, experts say. What do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? A vaccine that is so ineffective that it was able to, break through masks? I don't quite understand exactly what this is saying here. They're saying, well, all these people got vaccinated, but because people didn't wear masks, the virus was able to spread. I thought the whole idea about getting vaccinated was so that people didn't have to wear masks. I mean, I don't wear one anyway. Obviously, you know that, but what the heck is going on here? So let's have a bit of a read through here. Look at this. All right. So they're saying that the restrictions are back in Israel and the government is becoming more draconian than really any time ever before. Look at this. Some people had plans to go to water parks, others to a museum, but others just out to eat. But the children aged 3 to 12 needed to get a coronavirus test to do so first. All right, so kids from 3 years old to 12 years are being required to take PCR tests, this invasive test, before they can leave home with their parents to go out and enjoy life. All right, it goes on to say here, as of August 20th, the quote, green passes are required to enter restaurants, public pools, museums, and any other public place besides parks. The pass is issued to people who have received 2 vaccine doses or who have recovered from coronavirus. So what sort of freedom is that? What sort of freedom is that? It's like, well, you're going to get your freedom back, but we're not going to allow you to do anything unless you inject 2 doses of something that you might not necessarily want. Right? It goes on to say here, but unlike in the past, children who are not eligible to get vaccinated must have a pass as well. So you're not eligible, but that doesn't seem to matter. Okay, it's hard, said Shira Elkin, who winced when she had to pin down her frightened and crying 4-year-old to allow the medic to take a swab from inside her nose. Are you a parent? Would you hold down your 4-year-old whilst somebody did that? I mean, this is insane. But I understand that it's important and I'm ready to make the effort. Okay, so according to this person here, she believes that she's doing it for the betterment of her country, and holding down her frightened 4-year-old to allow the medic to take a swab is, what is it, like an act of service or something like that? All right, it goes on to say here, if they make us do this every day, I'll pull my hair out, said Tamar Cohen, who waited with her husband and 2 young daughters. Quote, it's ridiculous. We can't wait in line every day. So doesn't matter that they've hit this vaccination rate of 70%. Look at the restrictions. Look at the COVID policy. Look at what the government is subjecting their people to. The people all complied. They said, we'll go and get the jab so that life can go back to normal. There's nothing normal about holding down a 4-year-old little child and having a test conducted on them. What sort of rubbish is this? This is just absolute abuse. It goes on to say, the requirement is the latest and the most draconian. All right, so the restrictions are only getting more draconian as their rate of immunization goes up. All right, it says here, it's the most draconian move in Israel's government's battle against the Delta variant, which has hit Israel hard. The fast spread of the variant caught Israelis by surprise. All right, it snuck up on them. They weren't expecting it. Goes on to say here, Israel was one of the first countries to vaccinate the majority of its population, and by March, most Israelis were already putting COVID-19 behind them. Or at least they thought they were. So they may have put COVID-19 behind them, but COVID-19 did not put the people behind itself or something like that, or I don't know. Goes on to say here, health experts say there are 2 main reasons the Delta variant hit Israel so hard. For one, Israelis were flouting the mask requirements. So I read this line and my brain stops, ladies and gentlemen. The Delta variant hit Israel hard because people stopped wearing masks because they adhered to the government's requests and went out and got the jab. But that's the reason for the spread of the Delta variant. Am I missing something here? Maybe I'm just not getting it. Anyway, it goes on to say here, the mask requirements were reimposed at the end of June. Now police are handing out fines to those who do not wear a face covering. All right, so much for having their freedoms reinstated. It goes on to say, the other reason given for the high rate of infection is that most Israelis were vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. Wait, what? I thought this was the vaccine that everybody was praising. The vaccine that is the preferred due to the lower rate of received and reported adverse events following immunization. And I'm referring to the reports from the TGA. But it's supposedly not. And this is not some airy-fairy article. This is AlJazeera.com, a very well-established news agency. And as you can see here, the other reason given for the high rate of infection is that most Israelis were vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine, which data shows is less effective than the Moderna jab against the virus. All right, so apparently it's the right call. It says, in addition to requiring testing for children, which, in my opinion, is child abuse, all right? I'm saying that. I believe it's abuse. And anyone not fully vaccinated, Israel will require all teachers to have a green pass to work. Israel has also imposed stricter guidelines regarding entry into the country. Foreigners are not allowed to enter without receiving a special permit and taking numerous tests. Israelis are not allowed to fly to red countries, such as Spain, Brazil, and Mexico, without a permit from a special committee. Goes on to say here, this is coming from a professor by the name of Professor Cohen, but in the meantime, we moved from 100 cases a day to 8,000 cases a day. Cases or positive PCR test results, I'll leave that up to you to answer that. And he goes on to say here, I won't be surprised if in a couple more days we see more than 10,000. we had no choice but to give a booster shot. All right, so Israel made the determination, all right, well, one jab's not good, two jabs not good, and now there's a lot of Israelis lining up for a third jab, and they're expecting a different result. How does the saying go? There's a certain saying, ladies and gentlemen, I'm struggling to think of it, something to the effect of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity. All right. It goes on to say here, the professor said, I would have preferred more data, but I think we made the right call. All right. More than 1.3 million Israelis out of a population of 9.3 million have received 3 doses of Pfizer so far. So on one hand, they're stating that Pfizer is not really effective against the Delta variant. And those are not my words, by the way. Look, that was said by the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Bennett. He said, quote, vaccine is significantly less effective than against the Delta variant. He was referring, this guy here, he was referring to the Pfizer vaccine. So they say that there's been breakthrough cases. So they're suffering this huge surge because of breakthrough cases. You know, the term breakthrough kind of implies that it's something rare. There was a breakthrough case, one just slipped past. But it seems that there are thousands of breakthrough cases occurring in Israel all the time. It goes on to say, some people have become infected with coronavirus despite having received 3 shots. All right. Why could that be? I'll tell you who is absolutely in stitches laughing right now, ladies and gentlemen. The shareholders of Pfizer. The shareholders of Pfizer are literally giving each other high fives, drinking expensive whiskey, and just expressing how happy they are to be selling all this product. They thought they needed 1, they need 3. They're still recording thousands of positive test results, and they just want more of our product. So, tell you what, life's funny when you have plenty of money, and the shareholders of Pfizer, I tell you what, they're having a big laugh right now. They're laughing. They're laughing all the way to the bank, and they're doing so at, well, you know what it is, right? All right, so what do we have here? Highly vaccinated Israel is seeing a dramatic surge in new COVID cases. All right, this is coming from npr.org. All right, so npr.org actually gave a different view in relation to why Israelis are actually producing positive test results. All right, so Al Jazeera, we have here that supposedly the experts stated that it was due to not wearing masks, and the other one was due to, what was it? The Pfizer vaccine is supposedly not effective. All right, but apparently there are some other reasons as well. So let's look at these reasons, okay? 1, immunity from the vaccine dips over time. All right, it's a little bit of a different reason. 2, the Delta variant broke through the vaccine's waning protection. 3, if you get infected, being vaccinated helps. Oh, okay, so that's not a reason to describe their their sort of positive test figures. But look at this. 4, Israel's high vaccine rate isn't high enough. So Israel's recording record cases, and they're one of the countries that's the most vaccinated. But a reason here is that supposedly their rate isn't high enough. So I actually gave a figure before of just under 70% receiving either 1 dose or 2. But according to NPR.org, it says here 78% of eligible Israelis. Okay, eligible. All right, so that's what they're saying here. All right, here we go. Reuters, Israeli doctors find severe COVID-19 breakthrough cases, mostly in older, sicker patients. Oh, that's the same article. Israel tightens restrictions on coronavirus as new cases surge. All right, that was just from the other week. Becker's hospital review. And by the way, I'll send you all these sources. Go to mcjreport.com, click in the top right-hand corner, join our newsletter. I'll send it all out to you so that you can review and read these articles thoroughly. I don't expect you to take my word for it. And of course, I give commentary. Keep in mind, I give my opinion and I do not proclaim my opinion to be fact, just so we're clear. Look at this. Nearly 60% of hospitalized COVID-19 patients in Israel fully vaccinated, data shows. All right, so here we go. That was when this was in July when their positive test results started increasing, and it's only increased since. So what do we have here? Science, a grim warning from Israel. Vaccination blunts but does not defeat Delta. Now here's something really interesting. I was looking for more articles on Israel, and I saw here a result from 6 days ago from the Jerusalem Post. Bennett, who's the Prime Minister, he said that people are dying from COVID, not COVID vaccines. And when you click into this article, it actually comes up with a completely different article. So I thought that was interesting to point out. Why was it that the Prime Minister of Israel felt the need to address this concept? Why did he feel the need to set the record straight? That's a question for you at home. Is it possible that there's something going on over in Israel with the hospitalizations? Is it possible there's something going on there that we're not quite aware of, just us, measly people in the public just looking at everything going on in the news? Is it possible they're not giving us the full picture and that there are some important details that have been perhaps specifically left out? What do you think at home? I don't know. What do you reckon? And here we go. Portugal says eases restrictions as they have achieved 70% vaccination, right? But you look at what's going on here, they're still imposing restrictions on the people, okay? There's still limits on how many people can gather and sit down. They're imposing these passes, the vaccination passports, density limits, capacity limits. And they're producing thousands of positive test results. So Scott Morrison, I think, is pulling the wool over the people's eyes, the people of Australia. I think that
the National Cabinet agreed the plan.
Go away, Scomo. Go away. We've heard enough of you for today. I think he's lulling us into a false sense of confidence. And in my opinion, should Australia adhere to the request of Scott Morrison, I don't see our freedoms being returned to us. I see a greater possibility of our freedoms being returned should, say, the truck drivers of Australia unite and come good on their message, okay? I spoke to a couple of mates of mine, including Sydney George, and what George expressed to me in relation to the truck drivers is that most likely it will be owner-driver truck drivers that actually stand up and do this. But, we have to see how it plays out. The truth remains that if truck drivers decide they really want to take a stand on this issue, Australia stops and the government absolutely must come to the negotiating table. I think about it, I think to myself, who has the most power in this country? I would say police and truck drivers. Tyrannical policy is only made tyrannical based on those who are willing to enforce it. Australia is only capable of functioning by those who are willing to transport food and resources around the country.